My mom, Carolyn, couldn't handle the fact that I got pregnant before her favorite daughter. So she did something wild. She brought my ex back into the picture. What he ended up revealing made her wish she'd never mess with me. It's kind of strange, honestly, because you'd think I'd call her Mom, like most people do. But Carolyn always made it clear that neither I nor my half-sister, Sadie, were allowed to call her that. I think in her mind, Mom sounded too old or too serious for how she saw herself. She just couldn't wrap her head around being seen that way. She used to say she felt too young to be called Mother, like the word itself was a burden. So we always just called her Carolyn, like she was a neighbor or maybe a cool aunt, not our actual parent. Carolyn got pregnant with me back when she was still in high school. It wasn't planned. She and my biological father, Derek, didn't see it coming. She's always called it an accident, and no matter how casually she says it, that word has stuck with me more than she probably realizes. Carolyn and Derek were high school sweethearts, but they were young, impulsive, and not really thinking ahead. When Carolyn told him she was pregnant, he straight up said he didn't want to be with her. He agreed to pay child support and be a dad to me, but that was the limit of what he was willing to offer. He made it clear he wasn't going to pretend to be a family or continue their relationship. That crushed Carolyn, even though she doesn't talk about it much. I think she had some naive hope that having a baby might make him stay, or at least take things more seriously. But he didn't see it that way at all. And when that reality hit her, it hit hard. After I was born, things between Carolyn and my dad only got worse. She held on to a lot of resentment, and every time he showed up, whether to pick me up or just visit, she'd almost always start a fight. It didn't matter what the reason was, she always found something to argue about. Sometimes it was little stuff, sometimes bigger things, but it usually came back to the same old wound, that he didn't want her. I was just a kid, so I didn't understand what was going on. I believed what she said about him. She'd tell me things like, he doesn't love you enough to marry me, or a real father takes care of his family, your dad's just a deadbeat. I couldn't process it back then. But as I got older, I started seeing it differently. Eventually, I realized my dad wasn't the bad guy she made him out to be. Actually, he was the opposite. He was consistent, showed up every weekend like clockwork, never missed a visit, always on time, and he genuinely seemed happy to be around me. He never skipped out on child support, and you could tell he really cared. Even though things between him and Carolyn were a mess, he was trying to be a good dad. He wasn't perfect, but he definitely wasn't the villain she painted him as. When I was 5, Carolyn met Ray, the man she would eventually marry and now calls the love of her life. Watching her with him was surreal. She seemed like a completely different person. Ray's a good guy. Real laid back. From the start, he treated me like I was his own, no hesitation. That meant a lot, especially with how rocky things were between me and Carolyn. Ray wasn't the issue. He was steady, kind, and tried to show up for me in ways Carolyn often didn't. Not long after their wedding, Carolyn got pregnant again, this time with Sadie. When Sadie was born, I was over the moon. I loved her right away, and over the years, we've become incredibly close. Sadie's my best friend. I'd do anything for her. But as much as I love her, there's no denying that Carolyn's always treated us differently. From day one, it was obvious Sadie was her favorite. Carolyn gave Sadie the kind of love and attention I had always dreamed of. I'd watch her beam around Sadie, fussing over her, dressing her in cute little outfits, buying her every toy she pointed at. Sadie was and still is the center of Carolyn's world. And me? I felt like I was barely in the picture. Carolyn kept her distance from me. Cold even. When we did spend time together, there was always this weird tension, like I was more of a burden than a daughter. Of course I was jealous. Who wouldn't be? I wanted the same love and attention Carolyn gave to Sadie. I tried to earn it. I really did. But whenever I asked for something like a dress or a toy, it usually got brushed aside. Sometimes she'd hand me my cousin's hand-me-downs and say I didn't need anything new, that spending money on me was wasteful. That kind of favoritism cuts deep. It wasn't just about stuff, it was about how she made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home. Even though I love Sadie with all my heart, it still hurts to see how differently Carolyn treated us, like Sadie was her only real child. Every year on Sadie's birthday, Carolyn went all out. There'd be decorations, presents, tons of guests. The whole house would feel alive with celebration. Balloons, cake, the works. You could tell Carolyn poured everything into those parties. They were the kind of birthdays kids dream of. Mine? They barely felt like birthdays at all. I was never allowed to invite friends over. Some years, Carolyn would just order a pizza, and that was it. No cake. No decorations. No excitement. Just a plain old pizza and another day that passed like it didn't matter. I'll never forget how much it hurt, seeing the difference between Sadie's birthday parties and mine. Her celebrations were huge, mine were barely even acknowledged. It was like one more sign that I just didn't matter as much to Carolyn, that I didn't deserve the same kind of love or effort. As I got older, I started calling her out on it. I told her it wasn't fair. But instead of listening or trying to fix things, she'd fire back with something cold, like, "Go cry to your dad." Like it was his fault she treated me like that. She'd say this is all because of him, as if that somehow explained her favoritism. It was just her way of avoiding responsibility. My dad, though, he did what he could to make up for it. He knew birthdays were important to me, and even if he couldn't throw big parties, he never let the day go by without making me feel seen. He'd call me right at midnight, every single year, to wish me a happy birthday. He always brought me gifts, made me feel special, even when Carolyn didn't lift a finger. He noticed the way Carolyn treated Sadie and me differently, and it bothered him big time. I remember him trying to talk to her about it once or twice. He didn't come at her aggressively, he just wanted to understand why she couldn't treat both her daughters with the same love. But Carolyn didn't want to hear it. The second he brought it up, she'd blow up. Screaming, yelling, shutting him down. She'd snap, "You don't get to have a say. Sadie's dad is my husband. You're not." Like the fact that she was married to Ray somehow gave her permission to love Sadie more. Like my dad's role in my life somehow made me less worthy of being cared for. That cut deep. It felt like I was being punished for something I had nothing to do with. And when I finally left for college, it became even more obvious how little Carolyn actually cared about me. If anything, it felt like she was relieved to have me out of the house. She barely ever called. And when she did, it felt more like she was just checking a box, not because she wanted to hear from me. She didn't visit. Didn't ask how I was adjusting. The silence was loud. Funny enough, it was Ray, Sadie, and my dad who made the effort to stay connected. They'd check in, see how things were going, show up when they could. That meant the world to me, but it also made Carolyn's absence feel even heavier. I tried not to let it get to me too much. I kept hoping that maybe someday she'd let go of whatever resentment she was holding on to, and maybe we'd have a shot at some kind of normal mother-daughter relationship. It was in my last year of college that I met Caleb. My ex. Things got serious between us pretty fast. He was supportive and he made me feel seen in a way I rarely experienced, especially not from Carolyn. When I graduated, it was a huge moment for me. My dad came. So did Ray and Sadie. Even Carolyn showed up, but only because Ray practically dragged her there. I know she wouldn't have come otherwise. Still, it meant something to have them all there. That day, Carolyn met Caleb for the first time. And to my surprise, she seemed kind of mesmerized by him. At first, I didn't think anything of it. But then she started making these offhand comments, like she couldn't believe someone like Caleb was with someone like me. The first time she said it, I laughed it off. I was used to her throwing out little jabs, things that sounded like jokes but stung way more than they should have. I told myself it wasn't worth making a big deal over. But then she did it again. We were all having lunch after the graduation ceremony, and right there at the table with Caleb, my dad, Ray, and Sadie, she made another crack. This time she said something about how I didn't look like someone Caleb would go for. Then she joked that maybe I was some kind of charity case. That wasn't just a snide comment. That was humiliating. I felt my face burn. I couldn't let it slide again. So I looked her dead in the eye and as calmly as I could, told her what she said was creepy. That I wasn't just a pretty face or not pretty, according to her, and that her words were out of line. I wanted her to understand that what she was saying wasn't just rude. It was hurtful. Not just to me, but to everyone at that table. Caleb looked pretty uncomfortable too. Even my dad, who usually tried to stay out of any drama with Carolyn, looked like he'd had enough. He kept shooting her these warning looks, trying to get her to back off before it got worse. I could tell he didn't want to make a scene in front of Caleb, but he was clearly angry. And honestly, who wouldn't be? It wasn't just one careless comment, it was part of a long pattern. Carolyn always found some way to knock me down, even on one of the most important days of my life. After that, something weird happened. Carolyn sent Caleb a friend request on Facebook. He told me about it and asked if I was okay with him accepting. I didn't want to make a fuss, so I told him it was up to him. He ended up accepting, mostly just to avoid drama. He knew if he didn't, Carolyn would bring it up in front of everyone and make it awkward the next time we all saw each other. Still, it felt strange. She'd barely shown any interest in my life while I was away at school, but now she suddenly wanted to stay connected to my boyfriend? Over the 4 years Caleb and I were together, Carolyn kept a polite but oddly familiar relationship with him. She'd comment on his posts now and then, send the occasional message. It wasn't anything blatant, but it always felt off. Like she was more invested in him than she ever was in me. Caleb noticed it too. He brought it up a couple times, said he felt like Carolyn was jealous of me. At first, I thought he was overthinking it. But the more he explained, the more it started to make sense. He pointed out how she constantly downplayed my achievements, made little digs, and acted weirdly fixated on who I was dating. It was like she was in some kind of silent competition with me. Jealous? That idea had never even occurred to me. I'd always figured she was just cold or maybe still mad about things that happened with my dad. But when Caleb said it out loud, something clicked. Caleb kept bringing it up, how Carolyn acted around me, and he was convinced she was jealous. He noticed the way she'd chip away at my confidence, always with these subtle digs, especially when things were going well in my life. Whether it was my relationship or something I accomplished at work, it was like my happiness annoyed her. At first, I didn't want to believe it. The idea that my own mom could be jealous of me? That just didn't sit right. But the more Caleb pointed it out, the more I started seeing it for myself. Every little jab, every time she brushed off my successes, it all started to look like more than just coldness. It looked like competition. That realization hit hard. After that, I started keeping my guard up around Carolyn. I stopped letting her words hit as deep. I still didn't really know what to do with the idea that my mom might envy me, but it definitely changed how I saw her. The distance between us grew even more. Eventually, Caleb and I went our separate ways. We'd been together for 4 years, and while we still cared about each other, life was pulling us in different directions. We agreed to stay friends, but like it usually goes, life got busy. He moved on, I moved on, and we lost touch. Then a couple of years ago, Ben came into my life, and everything changed. He's kind, steady, and makes me feel appreciated in a way I hadn't really experienced before. With him, things just felt easy and real. We talked a lot about what we wanted out of life, our goals, our future. And for the first time, I could clearly picture a life filled with love, stability, and eventually a family. I was genuinely happy. And I didn't take that for granted. Then we found out I was pregnant. It wasn't something we planned right away, but it wasn't unwanted either. We'd always talked about having kids, and even though the timing caught us off guard, we were thrilled. We dove headfirst into planning for this new chapter. First thing we did? We got married. It was a small ceremony with just our closest people. Sadie stood beside me as my bridesmaid, and having her there meant everything. Carolyn showed up too. But I could tell something was off. She had this sour look on her face, like she was annoyed by the whole event. Later, when we were alone, she didn't hold back. She told me straight out that she never wanted me to marry someone like Ben. In her mind, I was making a mistake. And then out of nowhere, she said she had been hoping I'd get back together with Caleb. I actually laughed when she said it. It was so ridiculous, so out of touch. I thought maybe she'd had too much champagne or something, just talking nonsense. I mean, I'd moved on. I was happy. And here she was, still clinging to the past. I tried to brush it off like I always did with her, but honestly it stung. It hurt that even on my wedding day, she couldn't just be happy for me. She had to turn it into one more moment to criticize or make me feel like I wasn't enough. But this time I had bigger things to focus on: Ben, our baby, our new life together. And for once I chose to give my energy to the good, not Carolyn's bitterness. Ben and I had agreed not to share our pregnancy news until after the wedding. We didn't want anyone whispering or casting judgment, so we kept it quiet until the vows were said and done. When we finally told our family, my dad, Ray, and Sadie were ecstatic. Their joy made the moment even more special. But of course, Carolyn couldn't let it be just joy. She immediately started poking holes in it, questioning if I was really ready to be a mom. She made these passive remarks about how I should have waited, how I might regret not spending more time with Ben before diving into parenthood. Her words felt less like concern and more like projection. Like she was speaking from her own regrets. Even in that beautiful moment, she couldn't resist planting doubt. But this time I didn't let it slide. I stood my ground. I was becoming a mother, and I wasn't about to let her take that away from me with her judgment and bitterness. I told her calmly but firmly, "I'm not you. I love Ben, and I have no doubts about this baby. Not one." I'd let her walk all over my choices for years, nitpicking, criticizing, always making me feel small. But not anymore. Not when it came to my family. That's when she finally showed her true feelings. She said she couldn't believe that I, the daughter she always treated like the runner-up, was the one to give the family its first grandchild. She admitted she'd always expected Sadie to be the one to win. Her words. Then she added that she wasn't ready to be a grandmother. Said I was ruining her image, her social life, by getting pregnant so soon after the wedding. Hearing that hit like a slap. My pregnancy, this joyful, beautiful moment, was now an inconvenience to her reputation? I was stunned. Even for Carolyn, that level of selfishness was jaw-dropping. She wasn't worried about me or how I'd handle motherhood. No, she was worried about how it would look. And that's when I hit my limit. I told her flat out that if she really felt that way, then she wouldn't be a part of my child's life. I told her straight up, if keeping up her reputation mattered more than being there for me as a mother and grandmother, then she was out. I told her she wouldn't be part of my child's life. And that I was done. No more contact. That conversation blew up fast. Emotions were running hot, and it turned into a full-blown argument. But I stood firm and asked her to leave. Since then, Carolyn's been blowing up my phone, message after message, trying to guilt-trip me into apologizing. She claims she was just being honest about how she felt. She even blamed my pregnancy hormones, saying I was being overly sensitive. She actually believes as my mother she's entitled to question my decisions, my marriage, my pregnancy, like it's her right. So hey Jenna, was I wrong to cut her off? Update 1, it's been a week since then. Turns out Carolyn didn't have a choice but to back down. Sadie and Ray both confronted her, called her out for being completely insensitive. They told her to let it go. And for once I think Carolyn finally realized I meant what I said, that I wasn't bluffing. That I wouldn't let her toxic behavior touch my child. She gave me an apology. Half-hearted, maybe, but it was something. She said she wouldn't be so negative anymore about the pregnancy, or Ben, or any of it. Update 2, buckle up, because this next part? I never saw it coming. 2 days ago, Sadie threw me the most beautiful baby shower. It was perfect, everything I'd hoped for. Carolyn showed up too, though she seemed weirdly jittery, like she was waiting for something. She kept glancing at the front door, fidgeting. I figured maybe she was expecting someone. But I had no idea what was coming. Then the doorbell rang. Carolyn practically leapt off the couch and turned to the room with this big announcement. She had a surprise for everyone. I assumed it was a gift or maybe a friend I hadn't seen in a while. Nope. It was Caleb. My ex. He walked in looking deeply uncomfortable, like he already regretted being there. Carolyn pulled him into the room like she was showing off some grand prize. I just stood there totally thrown. This was my baby shower. My special day. And suddenly, here was my ex-boyfriend standing in the middle of it. Carolyn went on to say she'd been talking with Caleb for weeks, and had finally convinced him to show up and give me another chance. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said I was only settling with Ben, but I didn't have to worry anymore because Caleb was here for me. The room went silent. Everyone was exchanging stunned looks. I just kept looking at Carolyn, then at Caleb, trying to process what the hell was happening. Then Caleb spoke. He looked humiliated and apologetic. He said he was sorry for crashing the party and that he never wanted to be there in the first place. The confusion on my face must have been obvious. Caleb explained that Carolyn had been bombarding him on Facebook for weeks, sending constant messages, practically begging him to come and save me from my life. She told him I was making a huge mistake having a baby with Ben. That I was throwing my future away. That he needed to come and take me back. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was so insane it almost didn't feel real. Caleb made it clear he had no interest in rekindling anything. He just wanted to tell me what Carolyn had been doing face to face. He came to call her out. To let me see for myself just how far she'd gone behind my back. As he talked, the tension in the room got thicker. Everyone was staring at Carolyn, whose face had gone bright red. She clearly hadn't expected him to say any of that out loud. Then Caleb turned to her and told her to stop. Told her to stop messaging him, to move on with her life, and that she had no right to hijack my baby shower for her own drama. For once in my life, I saw my mom completely speechless. No snark. No comeback. Nothing. Caleb said he always knew Carolyn was jealous of me. And that it was disappointing to see she hadn't changed at all, not even after all these years. You could see the weight of it hit her. She looked completely exposed. Ashamed. And for the first time ever, the truth was out for everyone to see. Before he left, Caleb gave me a small gift he'd picked up for the baby. It was thoughtful, especially considering how weird the situation was. I thanked him. And I meant it. Because without him speaking up, I don't know if I ever would have believed Carolyn was capable of something like this. Plotting behind my back. Sabotaging one of the most important moments of my life. After Caleb left, the whole room was silent. All eyes were on Carolyn. She looked like she wanted to vanish. She was on the verge of tears. And honestly, I was still trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. My own mother had tried to ruin my baby shower. My joy. My peace. And that sealed it for me. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a difficult relationship, it was something darker. Something I had to walk away from for good. Since then, both Sadie and I have completely cut off contact with Carolyn. The rest of the family was there too, and word spread fast. Nobody wants anything to do with her now. Even my dad warned her to stay far away from me and my child. I still can't believe how far my mother was willing to go to try and wreck my life. Update 3, it's been 7 months since all that went down. For everyone asking, our baby was born healthy and happy. Ben and I are doing great. My dad, Ray, and Sadie visit us often, and we all get together regularly. The love and support I feel from them means everything. None of us speak to Carolyn anymore. Ray has even separated from her. After he found out the full story and confronted her, she still refused to apologize. Tried to justify everything. That was his breaking point. He told me he finally realized if she could treat me, her own daughter, like that, there was no telling what she might do to anyone else. Her selfishness runs deep. And now he knows he's better off without her too.